How y'all doing this morning? This morning, I just kind of want to go over some basics about cooking with this salt. I know maybe most of y'all have seen my salt videos that I've been doing, cooking on this posh salt, Himalayan sea salt. It's really great stuff to cook with. Gives you great flavor, great heat transfer. Anyway, I just wanted to go over some basics with you this morning, kind of answer some questions for everybody that I've been getting. First thing, kind of to the basics of salt, you gotta heat it low and slowly. So you want to always start out, let's say, when I'm cooking on the barbecue grill outside, I'm using a charcoal grill. I'll heat it in the oven inside. Start the oven out at 220. When it gets to 220, let it stay there about 10 minutes or so. Then I'll crank it up to about, 275. Go about 10 minutes in stages until I like to get up to about 400 before I put it on the grill. And I can usually do all that, while I'm fixing everything else up and stuff like that. So that's not really a problem. But the purpose in doing that, you want to dissolve all the water, the moisture out of the salt block so it doesn't steam out really quickly or something. If you just took a cold salt block, especially down in humid climate like where I live, and it had some water trapped inside of it, and you put on super high heat, that water's going to expand very quickly. It's more likely to crack the block or create little fissures in there, and you don't want that. So if you'll just heat it slowly, it gives a chance for that water to evaporate without just expanding rapidly and danger of cracking the block. On the stove top, you can put it on their back small burner, start on super low, do the same thing. Just gradually turn up, gradually turn it up. On a grill outside a gas grill, what you can do is you can turn your grill on very, very low. If you don't have a very, very low grill or something like that, or you have a bigger grill, you can do it indirect. You can set it off to the side, turn a burner on the side, and just gradually heat it up. That's just basically what you're trying to do, is gradually heat it up. Now on the charcoal grill, like I've got, the best way I've found, because my charcoal's already lit and hot when I put it in the grill. You could heat the salt indirect if you had to, but if you got an oven nearby, I find it a lot easier to heat it in the oven. And the next point I want to bring up is the fast and hot, or the slow and warm methods. All right, the fast and hot is how we like to cook on the salt. You want to have the salt super hot, at least 500 degrees before you put the food, or before you food the salt. It gets on there. Once you put the food on there, it's going to start sizzling. It's going to cook. The fats are going to start coming out. That salt's going to help to sear that crust on there. It's going to give you a little bit of flavor, but it's not going to get all up in your food. It's going to give you that crust with a little bit of salt flavor, just enough there. That's what happens when you put on the really hot salt, and that's what we want to get that good sear. If you do it slow, like I don't know if you noticed in my video last night, if you check on my bacon burgers or bacon cheeseburgers, I started the bacon out almost as an experiment in the oven slowly with the salt. Now what happened, the bacon has a lot of fat, so that's another thing that will help to barrier some of the salt. If you have a food that's very lean or something that may have a little moisture to it, you can put some fat on the salt, like a little bit of oil or something like that, maybe peanut oil or another high temp oil. That'll help to block some of the salt from coming up in the food. But anyway, that was my idea with the bacon, is that it had so much fat in it that we didn't get much salt. No, it didn't get too much salt, but it did get more of a crust of salt on the outside than normally, if you had cooked it on a hot salt block. And that's the next thing let's talk about. Let's talk about fats and liquids and stuff like that. If you put something that's really wet on a salt block, let's say you marinated something in a liquid marinade, and you put on, when that liquid starts coming out, it's going to start dissolving that salt. Therefore, that salt's going to cake up around your food. You want to try to dry your food off as much as you can. Even if it's like seafood or something, just pat it with a towel, have it dry on there, because then it's just going to get that little bit of crust. You're going to stay away from everything getting too salty. That's what I did the other night. I cooked some shrimp on there and just made sure they were patted dry. Another thing is the fat. Like I said, you can put a layer of fat down, the hot oil or something like that, and that kind of barriers against getting too much salt. But I haven't had a problem with anything getting too salty, but this is just something to keep in mind. The the fast and hot, a little bit of fat on the food or on the salt. You don't want to stay away from the slow and warm like that with the food. Now, on the other end of the spectrum, you can chill. You can put your salt in the freezer for several hours, get it real super cold. You could serve fruit, stuff like that on it. That'd be great. It'll keep things cold for a while. It makes a beautiful serving platter. Another thing let's talk about just for a second. I hate to keep changing the subject. When you're serving on salt, you want to use a nice, pretty salt block, one that you don't necessarily use for cooking. When you use the salt for cooking, your piece of salt for cooking, it's going to get discolored, and I'll show you in a minute. But if you'll just serve off the salt, off a different salt block, you can keep this beautiful color, okay? So, we're talking about chilling. You can set your fruit and stuff like that on there, especially if it's really cold, to keep a lot of the moisture from getting out in the salt and dissolving into the salt, things of that nature. So that's a good purpose for it too. A lot of people have asked about cleaning the salt. Okay, with cleaning the salt, you're going to think about the salt is antimicrobial. That's another great property of the salt. So you're not worried about a bunch of bacteria or anything growing on it. Basically, you're just trying to get the big pieces, the dirt, the grease and stuff like that off there. Now what I do, I'm going to show you. If you can see, here's the salt that I cook on, okay? Got most of the stuff off of it. Okay, actually, I do a lot of cooking on this side as well. As you can see, I've cleaned that side. But the salt, like I said, it's going to take on a little bit of black and stuff like that from the soot and from the food and everything like that. I got one of these little scrapers. You can buy these at the hardware store, Walmart, anywhere. It's got a little razor blade in the end. And what I do is after the salt's cooled for several hours, I'll take my razor blade and I'll just scrape any kind of soot or anything like that. And I've already done it to this one pretty much. I mean, it really cleans it up. I mean, it's amazing how much of this, any kind of grease or anything that's on there, you can just scrape right off the surface with the scraper. That's my first line of cleaning. If I can clean up good enough that way, I really kind of want to leave it alone, because the more water and moisture you put on there, the more you're dissolving your salt. Therefore, your salt's not going to last all that long. But if I have to go the next step, and this was by the owner of Posh Salt, she came up with this idea, Laura. So this is her deal. So you cut a lemon in half. Then you put a little bit of salt on the lemon. So what I did, I took a kosher salt or a rock salt, dipped a half a lemon in the salt, and I just scrubbed my salt block with that. I acted like an abrasive. It actually cleaned up any of the oils and stuff like that were on the outside, the leftover fat. Works really good. Spray it just for a second with some hot water. Spray on each side. Put on a towel to dry. That's all you need to do. Don't ever put these in a dishwasher. They will dissolve. Don't sit there and soak them with water. Don't ever put soap on them. Some people clean them with steel wool and all that. And I don't think that's necessary. If you'll just scrape it off, like I said, with this little bitty razor. This is cheap, and this thing was less than $2. Great little tool to get to clean the salt. And then if you have to, or every once in a while, clean it down with the lemon treatment. That's a really good deal to do. So that's how we like to try to clean the salt, get it to last as long as possible. So again, let's hit on, like I talked about with your cooking, and your salt is going to discolor somewhat. So you probably want a cooking block, and then you also have some other blocks that you like to serve on. They'll have that beautiful rose color, and all the beautiful table settings. Here's a bowl. Use that sort of thing. Another thing, a lot of people have been asking about, what size do you get? What's the best size to get? In my opinion, it's another thing you have to think about. Salt is, it's a rock basically, so it's heavy, fairly heavy. This 8 by 12 by 1.5 inch is about as much as I want to carry around, especially when it's smoking hot. Now, you saw me last night. I cooked 4 large burgers on this. Night before I cooked a big large steak. You could at least fit 2 more steaks on there. I'm just cooking for 2-3 people at the most. So that block of salt to me is plenty big enough. The big blocks a lot of people are getting, heard people talk about 9 by 18s and stuff like that. I want you to think about how heavy that's going to be carrying that out to the grill when it's super hot or managing it. So the salt size, I think the 8x12 is a perfect size to cook on. You could even go smaller if you want to just cook 1 or 2 things, or use several smaller blocks. Something like this here. I'm not sure what size. This is probably a 3x6 or something like that. But a lot of people use several of these. You could do that as well. But you don't have to have that big old hunking giant block. That's mainly used for service. You'll chill that, set on a table, and put a nice big platter of stuff out there. You're not moving it around a whole lot. So I hope I've helped to answer some questions. Hope all y'all order you some salt from Posh. And we all can enjoy cooking on salt. It's a great way to cook. Helps to seal in that flavor, give you that little bit of subtle salt taste, and it retains temperature very well. I mean, you can have a salt block heated up, and 30 or 45 minutes later, the thing is still warm, still hot. I mean, it's like, if any of you ever like to cook on cast iron and stuff like that. Now, I used to love cooking on cast iron. I love cooking with salt because it retains heat, almost like that cast iron, but maybe I think it's a little bit better, and I'm not using much fat. That's another thing. I'm not having to put all a bunch of butter and oil in there. Things aren't sticking to the salt. That is really cool. You know, with the shrimp, I was really worried the other night the shells or something like that might stick. They didn't stick at all. Just that little bit of oil I had on the shrimp, they turned over. Haven't had any issues with anything sticking. So y'all please follow my videos on the Posh salt, the cooking and everything, and I appreciate all my viewers. Y'all ask me any questions. Feel free to ask, and I'll do my best to answer. If not, I can get you some help from Laura at Posh Salt. And thank y'all for watching.